Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, are you having a good time at the conference? All right. You know, when we thought about what we wanted to do today, and, you know, today is a day when we always kind of pay homage to this idea that really started way back in 1997 when I attended the President's Summit for America's Future that was being led by General Colin Powell with a simple idea that America's businesses need to do more than just make money, but give back through volunteerism, through mentoring, and by using their positive, powerful resources to create change in the world. That's why I was so excited 13 years ago when I started Salesforce.com that we would take 1% of our equity and 1% of our profit and 1% of all of our time and put it into a 501c3 public charity. And today, that's created this amazing organization that has given back hundreds of thousands of hours of community service, $40 million in grants, and runs 16,000 organizations for free. And I just want to thank so much the General for that incredible contribution. Tonight, we celebrate that with our third concert that's dedicated to the new children's hospital that all of us are building here in San Francisco, where Lady Antebellum is going to be performing. And I can tell you, we pay them a small fee, not their full fee, to come. And lo and behold, they've even contributed that back to UCSF. Incredible. We want to continue the conversation that all of us have been having about the future, about improving ourselves and improving our businesses. And to do that, I want to introduce you to two incredible leaders. These two are two of the greatest leaders I believe we have here in the United States. Our first leader has been with General Electric for more than 30 years. Barron's and many others have said perhaps he's the best CEO in the world. He's created a company that Fortune says is the most admired. Our second leader, you may have first met when he was the National Security Advisor for President Ronald Reagan, or when he went on to become the general who was the leader of and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And then our first African-American Secretary of State that certainly created incredible new consciousness that allowed for the next generation of leadership to take hold in the United States. Two incredible leaders that have had incredible impact on our world. Please welcome Jeff Immelt and General Colin Powell. Well, thank you so much for coming to Dreamforce. We're really thrilled to have both of you here. And when we were thinking about this conversation that we could have, you know, we're very much in this new world. We're in this new era, and it's an era that is a lot about next generation technology, especially as it regards to the cloud and mobile computing and social computing. And I thought, what an incredible conversation we could have between the General and the CEO. The two leaders who I deeply respect, and I thought that we could all learn so much from. So I'd love to get your perspectives on this new social world that we're in. You know, we've seen how it's created this next level of transparency. We've seen how it's altered the Middle East, how it's even altered the presidential campaign happening here in the United States. And I know that both of you have experiences where you're using it in your personal lives or even in your business. Let's start there. General, would you like to take that on?
I think it has been a revolutionary development over the last 25 or 30 years. And I'm proud to say, you know, it was the United States Armed Forces that sort of developed the internet. We got to get a little credit for that, if you don't mind. And it was also the United States Armed Forces that put up the GPS that now everybody uses. And so we've been a part of this for a long time. However, in my own personal life, as I was saying to a group earlier, I was born analog. And I've been desperately trying to keep up with the digital world. I was on the board of America Online for a number of years when we were adding 1 million subscribers a month. And my gosh, we went from 26 KPS up to 28 KPS up to 56 KPS. And we thought that was the most remarkable thing in the world. And now I've watched it all explode to where it is now. And I've watched how it has changed the world. I've watched how the information revolution now allows us to talk to anybody in the world, and how it has reshaped economics throughout the world, politics throughout the world. It has helped brought down barriers between people. It has helped end the Cold War, and of course it had a lot to do with the Arab Spring. And as you mentioned, Mark, here in our own country, how it is affecting politics. There are dangers, I think, with this revolution, especially the social part of it, where we are so interconnected that perhaps we may be too interconnected. And so as we particularly raise our children, we want them to take advantage of these tools. We want them to be very, very literate with the use of these tools, but we also have to make sure we're protecting them and we're protecting our society. So I'm all for it. I'm on Facebook, and I use it very, very effectively. I didn't sign up initially to Facebook. Somebody pretended they were me and signed me up to Facebook. And we finally recaptured it, and it is now on my Facebook page, and I'm very proud of it. But I'm also starting to see what limits I should impose on my own life in order to protect my personal privacy. But we now have the ability to move information, knowledge, capital, risk, opportunity around the world to the poorest people in the world. And through the use of social networks and the information revolution, we are able to bring hundreds of millions of people up out of poverty. That in and of itself is a great thing that all of the people in this room can be proud of being a part of.
On a personal note, I am one of your Facebook friends, one of about 3 million, I think, that you have. And I noticed that you just had your 50th wedding anniversary, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the story I was telling Mark is that my assistant took a picture of my wife and I being married 50 years ago. We were cutting the cake. My wife had put it in the Washington Post, and my assistant took it out of the Washington Post and put it up on our Facebook page. Just a little picture of a young lieutenant and his new bride. I was getting ready to go to Vietnam, so we had to get married on 2 weeks' notice because I was going. And she put that picture on the Facebook page, and within about a week, we had something like 8,000 written comments, 180,000 likes, and 2.1 million views. And I said, this is remarkable. So we took a picture of our 50th anniversary celebration cutting the cake, and we put it up to the first cake cutting, and we picked up another 500,000 viewers.
Jeff, you've been an incredible leader in your company and in the country and the world. And how do you think this social networking is changing us and affecting us? And has it touched you in your business or in your personal world?
So I'd say the first thing I would say, Mark, is that one of the things that you have to do in a company like GE is stay young and fresh. So we are a 130-year-old company. You're a 13-year-old company. You're like Edison in our nomenclature at GE. So you have to constantly say, how do you stay contemporary? And I think we always accept technology. I'd say one of the pillars of our culture is to be a learning company and to always want to work on what's next. So that just overarches everything. And then, you know, for GE, we have 300,000 employees in 140 countries, over 9 big businesses. So in my world, I'm always fighting size and bureaucracy. And what social media does for me is it gives me access to customers and employees where I can just go over the top of whatever exists. So I did a chatter feed with our mining Salesforce this week, and I get raw data that I can then go talk to all the managers in the chain and say, what's going on here, guys? Come on. Which, by the way, you like to do every now and then, right? Just so people know it's, that you're looking. So it gives us access, it gives us speed. And then I think for the people in this room, I always think about what's next, and the ability in our world to go man to machine, the ability to marry kind of real-time customer data with real-time performance data of our products. That to me is kind of the holy grail in our business. I tell the story on jet engines. If we can save, just in the GE installed base, 1% on fuel burn, that's worth $2 billion of profit to the airlines around the world. Meaningful. So if we can change the way that our engines operate by getting real-time data, it's huge. So I just think it compresses time, it compresses layers, it makes access happen, and I think it's just beginning in some ways.
At this conference, we've been talking about the imperative to connect with your customers in a new way, and we've been talking about connected customers, connected partners, connected employees, and connected products, all as peers. Does that fit into your vision for the future of General Electric?
No, I think you and I have had the conversation, many times. Again, I think, today organizations move too slowly. And by using technology, I think you can move faster, you get more transparency, you get more access, you get a chance that every person in a company our size can be important, and I think that's great. But for our customers, our customers, there are hospitals, utilities, airlines, railroads, things like that. They probably have $200 billion of waste every year. And if we can improve the way our products work by having that kind of connection and knowledge, that is a huge target to go after, and I think just gives us more competitive advantage. So I just think speed is what it's all about, and that's how we see it.
How do you think it changes you as a leader? General, you've been an incredible leader now through many different generations of technology, and you've seen the computer come into the leadership process and the leadership loop. Now you're seeing it exit. You've seen the smartphone, the iPad, the wireless network. How do you think leaders should change in their fundamental execution in this environment?
I think leadership throughout any organization is still pretty standard and fundamental. What the information revolution has done, what all the social networks have done, it allowed us to do it a slightly different way. And you have to, because the young people coming into the military or the young people coming into the State Department, you'd better keep up with them. They're not going to keep up with you. You got to keep up with them. And they come in totally knowledgeable, digitally hardwired. And you have to use that competence that they bring in order to make the organization more effective. But at the same time, they're human beings. And you have to inspire them, you have got to give them a sense of purpose, you have to show that you respect them, you have to trust them and ask that they trust you, and create an environment of competence and character so that the machines don't get in the way of that human interaction, which is so very, very vital. But it fundamentally changed the way I did business, both as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and as Secretary of State, because now there is so much transparency and we're moving so fast that we have to respond to every bit of data that comes in, every transaction that takes place. It can't sit waiting to be looked at. It has to be acted on immediately. And you have to make sure that you have channels in place to distribute the information in a safe and secure way, but make sure it is usable without overwhelming the entire system.
You've mentioned trust and transparency, which are two words that I spend a lot of time focused on in my own organization. And we've seen that turn up as a big issue in the Middle East, especially in the last couple weeks, and as it connects to the social networks and even through the Arab Spring. Do you think that those Middle East leaders, do they need to take on a different type of leadership stance in regards to trust and transparency?
The potential is there, but you have to have leaders who are comfortable with the technology and not terrified because, these young people are going to march against me if I let them see what's going on in the rest of the world. But these leaders won't be able to stop it. You can't stop it. Vladimir Putin can't stop it, and the new Arab leaders can't stop it, just as the ones who were displaced couldn't stop it. And so you've got to pedal faster to keep up with the young people who understand this. And you have to really be following it and acting on what you're seeing. When people are marching in the street, or a vegetable peddler in Tunis sets himself on fire and launches the whole Arab Spring, and every Arab citizen can see what's going on in every Arab country, you can't just sit there and ignore it. You've got to respond to it. And so the challenge in leadership these days, whether it's in the Arab Spring or at a great company like GE, your company, or what I do for my life, you simply have to see it, understand it, and integrate it into everything that you're doing, because your people are expecting you to do it.
How do you look at that, Jeff? How do you think leaders will change with this new technology?
So, Mark, I give you, the intersection of both technology and the times in which we live in, where trust is low, coming out of the financial crisis, things like that. I just give you 3 words: openness. There's no going back, right? And it's a combination of the technology and just the expectation. And it's both, openness is both of, I'd say, both character and spirit. You have to be willing to share more. It's the expectation. And you better just deal with it. And so I think that's first. The second one is authenticity. People don't want to work for a phony. They want to be mission-based. They want to believe in their leader. They want to believe in what they're doing. And, one of the things that, I've done a blog now for 2 years inside the company, and it just, it's just my voice. It's my message, my way. And I said before I do it, I'm not going to let the general counsel see it, I'm not going to have any reviews. It's just going to go, and it goes. And that's the second one. And the third one is unity. People want to be on teams. That's always been true. I think it's more true today than ever before. And we say at GE, we are a we company, not a me company. It's the way we work. And people self-select in our company. They either believe in that or they leave. And that is, kind of part of the culture. So I'd say openness, authenticity, unity are 3 incredible words. Now, I would just follow up what the general said here on the Middle East. I was there. I went with a group right after the Arab Spring to Tunisia and Egypt. And, right after the revolution, because I was curious. We did a little bit of business in the places, and I just wanted to go. And what the people there needed almost more than anything else were jobs. Mark, it's just, look, guys, we have high unemployment in the United States. We have high unemployment in every country in the world. There's not enough growth, and there's not enough jobs. And, I got the sense, and I'm such a admirer of Colin's, and he's, been such a great leader. I would say at the outset, awesome guy. But, it's almost like you went to meet the guys running these countries. It's almost like, okay, now we've done it. What are we going to do next? There's no second plan. And so I think the business people in this room can never forget that we do important work that people count on too. That the best thing that could happen in Egypt right now is some way to create a small and medium-sized enterprise company. And maybe there's ways that American companies can help, or American politicians. But right now, what people need over there are jobs.
Mm-hmm. Let me reinforce that, if I may. When I was Secretary of State, I went to a number of conferences in that part of the world. And at one conference, we were all assembled, all of the European Union nations and all of the Middle East and Arab nations were there. And one gentleman raised his hand. I think he was Egyptian, but he was asking for the floor. And he said, "Let me tell you what the greatest problem we have in the Middle East is today." And I said, "Oh, goodness, he's going to say Israel." But he didn't. He said jobs. He said jobs. If we don't create jobs for our people, we're all in trouble. But you don't create jobs out of thin air. You have to have educated people. And you have to have an economic system that matches a political system that rests on openness and the willingness to invite business in, the willingness to have commercial law so that people can be comfortable investing in the country. And you also have to eliminate corruption. When the Soviet Union was collapsing, we sent a lot of academics over there to tell them what to do. What we should have sent was just commercial lawyers to give them a commercial, basis of law, so they know what it's.
All the lawyers just applauded, actually.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
But seriously, it was a famous Russian ambassador, Dobrinin, and I would meet with him privately when I went there as national security advisor in 1987 and 88 and early 89. And we'd go off to a KGB hotel where it was just the two of us and it was all secure. And he would say to me, "You don't know how Gorbachev is making us crazy. Gorbachev is making everybody crazy because he keeps saying," because remember, Gorbachev was a lawyer, is a lawyer, as was his wife. He said, he keeps saying we have to put this society on a basis of law. If we don't have law, and he really meant commercial law, if we don't have commercial law, then all we have are bureaucrats with diktats, and nobody can count on anything. So Russia will not be successful on resting on a basis of law. The Arab Spring will discover. You see a lot of chatter now about fundamentalism and Muslim Brotherhood. If they don't give them jobs, these guys are going to be out too. Because these people weren't rioting in the streets for ideology or religion. They want food for their table, roofs over their head, education for their children, health care. That's what they want. That's what everybody in the world wants. It's a human aspiration. And now that everybody can see it, yeah. A great example is China. China has brought 400 million people out of poverty in the last 30 or 40 years. It's fantastic, and I'm so proud of my Chinese friends. I've been going there for 40 years. Went there as a young officer when it was really bad. But there are 800 million people who are still there who have not been brought out of poverty. You know what they're doing? They're looking at those 400, saying, "When's my turn, Lord?" Or Mr. Chairman, or whoever you are. They all want the same thing. And if the Chinese government cannot adjust itself to build an economic system that will take care of those other roughly 800 million, they'll be in trouble too. That's what people want.
Just to back up what the General said, I think there's so much opportunity for America and American business if we can find ways to sell our products around the world. It is such a difficult story to tell, particularly with high unemployment in the United States, and I understand it completely. But, I look at GE, 65% of our backlog's outside the United States, but we're an American company. I'm an American CEO, right? I'm proud of, I love the United States. But in order for us to be successful, we've got to sell in 140 countries, and we've got to bring heat in every one of them, and we are a $20 billion exporter, but there are 1 billion people joining the middle class this decade, and there are 3 billion people joining the middle class by 2030, and very few of them live here, right? Some here, but there's a lot in Turkey and Russia and every other corner of the world. And that is a great opportunity. I hope we never lose our confidence that we can compete. And they all, believe it or not, believe in the American form of capitalism. Yeah. They all believe, and by the way, when the Secretary was the Secretary of State, he was one of our best salespeople. The diplomats and kind of we in our own way have U.S. Inc. that is pretty damn effective when you go around the world, and I just think it's
exactly.
People get. We've done a lousy job of telling the story. We've done a lousy job of telling the benefits, but I'm here to tell you that this country can compete.
Now, the strongest team we had in any one of our embassies was the economic consular, and we used to tell our ambassadors going out, do the things you have to do, go to tea parties, but your real mission is to enhance business connections between American business and the consumers here and between their business people and the consumers in the United States. We talk about the American economy, and I'm proud of my country, I'm proud of our economy, But if you really want to be successful, you need to understand it's an international economy. We are all connected. Something happens in Korea affects us here. A little country, Greece, has the potential of bringing down the entire European Union economic system. It's incredible. But that's how we are connected. And anybody who says we should be protectionist, we shouldn't have bilateral trade agreements, or we should only buy America, you don't know what buy America means anymore. Because American business is involved overseas in bringing money back to the United States through its efforts. And so we have to have a far more sophisticated understanding of the nature of the modern economic system.
Let's talk about that for a second. Jeff, you're the chairman of the U.S. Jobs Council. You're making a number of recommendations. We're having a hard time getting the jobs back, or is this the new normal for the next 5 years? What does the evolution of the economy look like, and is it something that the president needs to get more actively involved in, or is this something that is more organic in what's happening as a system?
You know, so Mark, my observation is that the U.S. economy gets a little bit better every day. You know, it was a deep recession, some structural challenges. We still have a big structural deficit that we have to manage, but gets, you know, just slowly a little bit better, and that's unnerving because people want it to be faster, and they want to see more jobs created. You know, 1% unemployment can never be the new normal. It's just not acceptable, right? And I think that's clear. Government doesn't create jobs. I don't think anybody on the Jobs Council really believes that the government creates jobs. I think what you want is the government to create the structure and the tone on which entrepreneurs can create jobs. That's the goal. So to that end, you know, what we try to do on the Jobs Council is just give common sense suggestions. So I would say training. There's almost 2 million open jobs today that go unfilled because we don't have enough welders, we don't have enough engineers. So training is something that the private sector can do, but the public sector can also help. Fast growth companies like Salesforce.com, that's what we need. You are, you know, the engine really of the most jobs being created. So we got to take as many things out of the way of high growth companies as we can. Regulatory simplification. You know, look, no CEO likes regulations. Count me on that list, right? I'm just like, but we're going to need regulations. We need standards. But it shouldn't be that there are 6 or 7 agencies that get to view every standard, and it shouldn't take 10 years to get a transmission line approved across state lines. That's BS. So there needs to be more accountability about that. And then the fourth thing I would say is what we should all learn from China is that infrastructure creates jobs, and that the government has a big role in infrastructure. Our infrastructure is not where it should be. So those are the 4 things. Now number 5, and never underestimate this, is tone. Tone. Close your eyes any night and say, I just listened to candidate X speak or candidate Y speak, and I'm a entrepreneur in Missouri. Did that speech motivate me to build my factory tomorrow? If the answer is yes, then they're on mission. If the answer is no, then they're not on mission. The tone has to improve in this country. We ought to say, everybody ought to stand up and say, it's safe to invest. It's time to invest. The future is going to be better than the past. Now's the time to go. You know, in our world, we're a high-tech, long-cycle business. I'm going to keep investing. I don't care about the fiscal cliff or anything else. We're going to keep going. But the tone in the country is not where it needs to be. There's blame for it to go around. And that, I'd say, above and beyond anything else I could give you that was wonky or policy, is what's got to change.
I couldn't agree more with Jeff. I travel all over this country, and I see businesses, I see trade associations, I go to universities. There's such great optimism and confidence out in the countryside. You see it here in this room and all the people who are watching this by remote. But you don't see that in our political halls of power. You see a polarization that is worse than anything I have seen in my 40 years of public life. And people say, well, you know, there's an election coming. I'm going to tell you something. Barack Obama isn't Superman, and Mitt Romney isn't Superman. What we need is super people who will start examining these issues and not just listening to what somebody says on television. You guys are the ones who do it. And so, businesses create jobs, and the jobs that have gone are not necessarily coming back. We've got to create new jobs. We've got to go up the ladder of sophistication. And as Jeff pointed out, and I would add a sixth one, we better start educating our kids for the jobs that are really going to be here in the United States.
Couldn't agree more. But you know, people, you know, again, business, let's face it, people don't like us that much these days, right? They like you probably more than me, but but you got a lot of people that like you here, so that's. But
what's not to like?
Exactly. Price reduction.
My mother's here; she definitely would agree.
No, but you know, people like their companies. You know, I've got. We've had a bunch of GE folks out here today. They like their company. The people that work for Salesforce.com, they like their company. You know, when I go see our aircraft engines being manufactured, the guys on the line, they like their company, right? The engineers, the salespeople, the folks in the factory, the people that invest in the engine, they're not on different teams. You know, they don't say, well, I'm in the 47% or the 99% or the 1% or the 20% or the, I make $200,000, so I'm in the 32%. They want to make engines, they want to beat our competitors, they want to satisfy our customers. They want to work together doing it. And I think that's the spirit that you bring. And that's the spirit that exists in the business community. And I just think there's a lot of cash on the sidelines. I actually think American business leaders got better during the crisis. The economy is going to take, you know, look, this is not going to be an instantaneous recovery. But I just think if we could make the tone better, better things will happen.
Mm-hmm. You know, when we think about these future jobs that you're talking about in the next generation's economies, especially here in the United States, there's an opportunity for a new energy economy. There's an opportunity for a new manufacturing economy, especially with robots. We see some pretty big changes that are happening in manufacturing jobs. Where do you see this next uplift in terms of jobs? Where are the investments that you're making? And I know you have a new solar panel plant here in the U.S., and we see a lot of actually next-gen energy, batteries, and things happen. Where do you see the next generation of jobs?
So I'll just piggyback on the two you mentioned. I think this is a country that could be energy independent in a decade. This actually doesn't get covered the way it should.
No, actually, Tony Robbins is here, and he was co-hosting or substituting for Pierce Morgan on Sunday night. He had a energy entrepreneur on, T. Boone Pickens. He said exactly the same thing. We should take a goal. It's kind of like a moonshot type goal.
Yeah.
That within a decade, we are an energy independent nation.
Look, I think, Mark, I've looked at 100,000 business problems in my lifetime. I've been around a while. This is imminently solvable. We sit on top of more natural gas than you can imagine. We've got some of the best wind corridors in the world. We've got a renewable portfolio that's strong. We've got great colleges and universities. This is imminently fixable, I would say. And then I think manufacturing, look, our company has always believed in manufacturing. Manufacturing has gone from 25% of the workforce, really when I started with GE, nationally, to 9% today. I think we can get it back up in the teens. Some of it will come from Silicon Valley, additive manufacturing and things like that, and some of it's just, you know, reflection of what's possible with better methods. You know, we in our toughest business, and we make basically high-tech stuff, but we're still in the appliance business. we basically moved all the production of our appliances back to Kentucky from Mexico and China and other places around the world. Now, you know, I don't do that because I run a charity, right? I do that because I think we can do it here and make more money. The people do lean manufacturing. We can make appliances in shorter cycle time than we ever could before. So I think a combination of the new manufacturing technologies, additive manufacturing, 3D printing, stuff like that, plus better labor management relationships are going to open up another era of competitiveness for the United States.
Mm-hmm. So do you see that as also in terms of an opportunity for productivity? Is that something that you would coach CEOs to start to focus in that area?
In two ways. First, I think people, you know, there was these books that were written that said every economy goes from a farming economy to a manufacturing economy to a service economy. Nobody in China ever read that book, right? Their book said, get as much manufacturing as you can. So we kind of looked down our nose at manufacturing for a generation. Mm-hmm. So what I would say is, I think owning your own supply chain is a big deal. It's
right.
a huge competitive advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And for us today, Mark, I think the era of inexpensive labor is basically over. Today, it's all about markets. Today, when we go outside the United States, it's because we've got to be in Saudi, we've got to be in Algeria. But I think if you're working the right way, you know, that gets homogenized very quickly. And it's more about being in front of your customer, having short cycle times, better speed, better flexibility. That's who wins. So people that are out there just chasing what they view as today's low-cost labor, that's yesterday's playbook.
Mm-hmm. And do you see that as a major global trend in terms of?
I completely do. No, I think that's, I see it every day. And again, I think it's, you know, in some ways that's going to be good for the United States. In some way that will mean that we have to be even more competitive for the future. So it's not all great news, but I do definitely think that's where, you know, that's where you got to be, mm-hmm. close to your customer.
You know, General, what would you advise leaders who are listening to something like this, that, you know, it's time to double down in these new areas and strategic areas and time to invest? They're hearing some messages, maybe they're uncertain, maybe they don't have the level of certainty yet that they are going to have now, certainly listening to Just Talk. Where can a leader draw that certainty from, and then what can they do to execute that in this new world?
I don't know if you can get certainty now the way we used to be able to get certainty. It's a matter of measuring the degree of risk associated with the certainty you think you have. And I think any business leader and any leader anywhere, in politics, military, elsewhere, has got to have his or her finger on the pulse of what's happening in the information revolution, the pulse of the international economic system, the pulse of the international finance system, and not just see things in stovepipes anymore. It won't work. You've got to do it all. But the most important thing leaders have to do is to do something that Jeff touched on, and that is to create organizations that are high-performing, that believe in themselves, In the military, always said, you know, every soldier wants to be part of a good team. Nobody wants to do a bad job. Everybody is looking up to leaders who are selfless, leaders who are passionate about the purpose of the organization, and leaders who have the ability to convey that passion and that purpose down to the last person in the organization at the lowest level of the organization. You create that kind of a team of human beings who believe in what you're trying to do, and they'll do just about anything you ask of them. You don't do that, and they won't do much of what you ask. They'll just go through the motions. You don't want people going through the motions. I no longer use the word motivate your people. The word I use increasingly is inspire. You want people self-motivated because they believe. They believe in what they're doing. They believe in themselves. They believe in their leaders because they see leaders who have courage, who are full of character, and who are absolutely selfless, not selfish. And I think that is one of the strengths that we have in our country. We have leaders like that. And so every organization that I've been privileged to lead, I always start out not with the PowerPoint presentations and not with seeing how everything's right. I start out with the people. What's this team like? What do they believe in? What do I have to do to get them to move in harmonic with me? You know, and not be like this, but always like this. And it is not that hard if you like people and if you convey to them that we're in this together, we're a team. I may be the Secretary of State and you may be the person cleaning my office at night, but I couldn't do my job without you. You are as important as anybody else in this organization. You got that? There is no unimportant job. And what I found is if you treat your people with that kind of approach, and it's just what Jeff was saying, you're going to have a high-performing team that'll win. If you don't treat them that way, they'll undercut you every day, and you'll never know it. So suddenly you turn your head and it falls off. I don't care how much mechanization you have or how much how many information systems you have or how good they are, but it's a human being that ultimately has to go up the hill, as we would say, or is on the line, making sure that a jet engine meets every specification that's been set for it. So leadership, I think, is universal. It fits into every organization because human beings are universal. And they all have dreams, wants, ambitions, anxieties, likes. And the best leaders I have worked with and the ones I've tried to emulate are those who can build those high-performance teams, understanding that it's the human beings that are more important than the information systems or the tools or the robotic stuff that you have. Human beings are the most important part of an organization.
You know, Mark, we study, so our Leadership Institute is about 20 miles away from West Point. And we have really,
I was there.
I know, we're always trying to study kind of who's got the leading thought on leadership. And increasingly, we've shared ideas with the military. And I'd say the three things we've learned about leadership in the modern era that we learned from West Point were, be purposeful. In other words, really be purposeful. You're going to get up tomorrow, you're going to read the newspaper, you're going to have people that want to change, stick with it. The second is, these things sound so simple, but it's always work on what's important. You're amazed in an organization how much time you spend doing stupid stuff, So always work on what's important. And I think the third, Colin, is adaptability.
Yeah.
I always, the great philosopher, Mike Tyson, said, everybody has a strategy until they get punched in the mouth. And that's, I think that's the way the world is today. And the ability to kind of say, okay, that door's closed, another door is open. We in 2005, 2006. Diesel fuel was really high. We were going to do a hybrid locomotive. So we invented this battery. We were going to do a hybrid locomotive. We made a couple of them. We tried to sell them, and our customers said, too expensive. Sorry, 0 orders. So we took the battery and said, okay, we're now in the storage battery business, okay? We're no longer in the hybrid locomotive business. Now we have a sodium battery technology, best storage technology out there, $200 million backlog, hopefully a $500 million backlog by the end of the year. So one door closed, another door opens. And that's the stuff that I think these kids that are coming out of the military, that we all ought to be hiring as they come out. That's the skill they have.
Yeah, this is really fascinating. But we drill into every one of our organizations and into our young leaders and our older leaders that you have to have a mission. But I've gone beyond mission to purpose. What are you're doing this not just for profit or not just for shareholder value. You're doing this because you want to make a better society. That's what 111 is all about. And so convey to the human beings working for you a sense of purpose as well as mission. Make that part of your company purpose. We bring good things to life, and now it is inspiration at work. That's the sort of purpose behind General Electric. 2 great slogans over a period of a quarter of a century. And then do your planning well. But as Jeff said, one of the things we teach all of our folks is always be prepared for the unexpected. Always have people in a back room somewhere figuring out what to do with a broken locomotive battery. And we call it contingency planning. So as soon as you've decided what you're going to do, you execute violently, and you put some guys in the back room who are thinking, what happens if this doesn't work or it goes wrong? One of the great theorems we teach our young officers up at West Point and everywhere else is, even the greatest of all strategists must occasionally take into account the presence of an enemy. A thinking enemy who is out there who thinks he's the greatest strategist. And have that agility of mind and be prepared to throw over your shoulder something that you thought was great, but turned out that it sucks.
General, when you're saying that, I know you're working with a lot of incredibly exciting entrepreneurs today, and you've been involved with a lot of new startup companies. And I notice when Jeff was talking about batteries, it reminded me you're involved with a local company here that's a fuel cell company.
Yeah.
With these next generation leaders and next generation technologies, when you look at what you're doing now, how do you juxtapose that about how you see them developing their technologies maybe 10 years ago? Is it different?
Yeah.
Is it the
Jeff
same?
is referring to Bloom Energy, which makes a solid oxide fuel cell that is very sophisticated, and we're selling lots of them. I'm on the board of the company. I'm a limited partner in Kleiner Perkins. And I've been with the company now for years. I've watched them when they really started just putting it together in a garage, and now we're building factories. And what is so exciting about the company is that we're going to make it smaller and smaller and smaller and more efficient and cheaper so that we can provide electric energy to far-flung villages that would use biomass to fuel this thing, and 100 kilowatts comes out the other end. Our purpose is not just to make things for the big shots around Silicon Valley, but to make something that ultimately can go to a village, be fueled by biomass, and bring them electricity they never could dream of getting by wire. Do for electricity what we did for cellular telephony by what we've done with cellular telephony. And so that's what is exciting about it. And there's no telling, you don't know what's coming next. You don't know what's going to happen. Be ready for it. Some of it will work, some of it won't work. I'm always asking, well, which technology you like most? Smartphone, your iPad, what? And the technology and the gimmick I like the most, and I'm getting in a little trouble talking about this, I like my Easy Pass. Think of it. It is frictionless. It is instantaneous. And I can go up the Jersey Turnpike through that old toll bar at 75 miles an hour. Yeah. And so I've been telling, there's an organization called...
Do you have special license plates or
Yes.
something? How do you...
Jeff, they stop me, but they're all ex-GIs.
Yeah.
They'll come up to the car and they salute, and then... And
doesn't quite
then
work for me. Doesn't quite
they
work
write
for
me a
me.
ticket. But it's, you don't know what's coming next. And the Parking Professionals is an association, and they wrote an article about me because I wrote a story about parking lot attendants. And I said, why can't I use my Easy Pass at a parking garage? Why can't I use it on a parking meter? Come on, think. And it's moving. Starbucks now has, Square. So sooner or later, you're just going to walk in a store, they're going to take a picture, and it's over. I don't know that I like this.
Is that where you're drawing the line on technology at that point?
Yeah, no,
You're always telling me you're drawing the line, but we have known each other now,
Yeah,
I
no,
think, for about 15
I'm
years, and the line keeps moving.
The reason, that's true, it's true. I keep getting sucked into something. If you saw my home office, I almost never go to my real office now, my real office, because I have a virtual office that's just as effective as my real office. And 3 computers will be running all day long. You know this, Mark, you email me frequently. So I don't know where it's all going. And I'm going to be 76 years old on my next birthday, so I don't know that I need too many more phases of this in my life. What I'm desperately trying to do is keep up with my grandchildren. As we were talking earlier, these kids are something else. The 4- and 7-year-old grandchildren were going somewhere with my other daughter, their aunt, and she put them in the back of the car, strapped them in, and starts driving away, and they start screaming, Auntie Linda, pull over, pull over. So she panics. She doesn't know. She pulls over. And Auntie Linda, you didn't turn on the GPS. We won't know where we're going, And the next door neighbor bought a 50-inch color television set, put it up on the wall, and the 4-year-old starts crying, "Mommy, Mommy, it doesn't work. It's broken." So she runs in to see what's wrong, and the kid's up there thinking it's a big iPad. You know what? I'm trying to keep up with this. And if I don't, I'm going to lose my grandchildren because they're going to walk away.
That's great.
You know, we've talked a lot about kind of current day issues, and certainly one of the big issues that's on everybody's mind, certainly at this conference, and certainly as part of our future consciousness, is the environment. We've seen changes in our environment, in our oceans, and in our temperatures, and some of this is related to technology itself. How do you think we should be looking at the current environmental challenges, Jeff?
You mean global warming and stuff like that, Mark? You know, look, we in 2004, I could see a lot of our businesses working on energy efficiency and emissions reduction. And I had been through 1992 Clean Air Act and things like that, and you know, just had an awareness of the environment. So we had a group of technologists just study, PhDs study, you know, climate science. Is it real? Is it caused by man? And stuff like that. And I'd say after studying it, I would say we came to the conclusion that global warming is real. It's caused by man. It's hard to tell exactly what the impact's going to be. You know, in other words, what it means for the polar ice caps and things like that. But purely from a standpoint of business, analytics, risk mitigation, stuff like that, you know, I always tell people, look, up in the time I started all this, I had never camped, you know, so I was not really, I didn't have an environmental bent or anything like that. I was really focused on the science. So now, you know, I think what the U.S. is good at is driving innovation, seeing how the entrepreneurial spirit can help solve big problems like that. And, you know, that's why I've been an advocate for a price for carbon, because I think it would allow more investable technologies to take place. So I think anytime you can align innovation, commerce with a social need, things happen faster. You know, affordable health care, global warming. If you can align entrepreneurs, innovation, science with a need, it's incredible to see the forces take place. So I think we're in a lull right now because the economy and things like that, but it hasn't really, Mark, we invest more now today on what we call eco-imagination than we did before, because, you know, for us, if the rest of the world, you know, if green technologies fall out of favor right now from an investor world, it just makes the technologies easier to buy for us, you know, because we think over the long term this is going to be a winner, and we're long-term players. So I just think innovation is the power, entrepreneurship is the power, identify the need, create one or two market mechanisms in between. Let's go. And I think that's why I've always looked at climate.
And how do you juxtapose that against kind of the global stage? Because, you know, you're recommending policy kind of in addition to, you know, the entrepreneurialism. When you look at this, because it's certainly more of a global issue, and, you know, you have a tremendous global vision, Jeff, because you're in China, you're in Brazil, and you're physically there. I mean, you're
look,
on the move all the
China's
time.
China's going to install more solar and wind capacity this year than the rest of the world combined. So, you know, look, I mean, that's one of my advantages, is that, you know, I see Brazil investing in wind. I see Canada. I see China. I see India. So, you know, do we need to worry about competitiveness? Do we need to worry about how, you know, impact on different people? Sure. But this train is going to leave the station called clean tech investing. GE is going to be on it. I don't know if the U.S. is going to be on it or not, but we will be. And we've got $25 billion of clean tech sales, up from $5 billion in 2004. It's going to double again, and we'll sell a lot of that in China.
There's a bit of a dichotomy here. Some things are in conflict. We want energy independence. I may not be quite as optimistic as you guys that we're going to get there that quickly, because the way in which all of these poor people are coming up into the middle class, as we've talked about, 1 billion, hundreds of millions, they've industrialized. And industrialization takes energy. It takes more and more energy. So the demand for energy is going up, even as we are creating these new sources of energy, shale and whatnot. Chinese have an enormous amount of wind and solar, but they're also building nuclear power plants, coal, and anything else that they can get their hands on because they need the energy. And in the process, they're totally polluting the urban areas and increasing other parts of the country. So I'm fully in agreement with you all that global warming is real. I think it's indisputable. But whether it was indisputable or not indisputable, surely it's in our interest to cut back on the emissions that we're throwing up there, whether you're an acolyte of Al Gore or not. It just seems to me to be a sensible thing to do everything we can to conserve energy and to make everything we use more energy efficient.
Is nuclear power part of the future picture? You mentioned solar, you mentioned wind.
Look, we're in the nuclear business. I think there's always going to be a fit. And I would say, one of the advantages about running a big company is that, we can place a bet on every block. And that means we don't have to be so smart about picking winners and losers. That's an advantage. So we're committed to gas, we're committed to steam, we're committed to solar, we're committed to wind, nuclear, and energy efficiency, and that's kind of how we think about the company. The thing I would say about nuclear is that it is a sovereign business. In other words, it's a government-to-government business. It really is not driven by private enterprise. We're the last American company that's in it. It's Japan Inc., it's France Inc., it's Russia Inc. That's who really is driving, whether or not there's going to be nuclear. So I'm a big believer in energy diversity. I'm a big believer in really just setting standards, high standards, and then let people alone so that they can meet those standards and be successful. But I'm here to tell you, I think the general's right in that, there's a lot of people joining the middle class. There's going to be big desires. The U.S. can completely own its energy future. It really can. And it will be the shame of a lifetime if we don't do it.
Why do you think neither of the presidential candidates have taken that kind of moonshot idea that you just articulated so well? In 10 years, by the year 2022, that we are energy independent?
I'm not sure I know what the answer to it, because I think it is one of the most important. It gets you into a lot of territory that people don't want to talk about because it's a little bit public policy, it's a little bit private. But Mark, I'm a guy after 30 years. I probably can't compete with General Powell, but I've been in 100 countries, and you go talk to the political leader. They talk energy, healthcare, education, and financial systems that drive entrepreneurship. Every country in the world you ever go to.
Yeah.
And if other countries had this great resource that we had, I think they'd be quite happy. I view this as a national strength, a job creator, and an economic driver for the next decade.
If my memory serves me correctly, every president for the last 40 years has said we want energy independence. But it never happened, and we never got on a track to achieve it. And I'm not sure that, I'd have to really think it through whether we just want to be all by ourselves, just consuming our own energy. It's an international thing.
I agree with that, by the way. I don't know if energy independence is what you
independence
want,
isn't the right
but
word.
I think you can be self-sufficient.
You can be self-sufficient.
And then you can make choices about who you trade with.
And a lot of the countries that deliver energy to us are, lower down on the scale, and we need to be markets for them.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about something, General, that I'd be remiss if I didn't. You're a world expert on international policy. We have a complex situation going on in the Middle East with Iran and the gambit with nuclear weapons. You've said before, it can be an existential threat. How do you view the situation today, And what is your recommendation for how we should handle this?
I think we haven't been doing badly with the sanctions and other things that are being done to make it much more difficult for Iran to continue. But at the same time, I think they are very determined to have a nuclear program. I think the question is still open as to whether they want to go up and have a nuclear weapon. They are now enriching to, say, 10, 15%, in some cases 20% for isotope medical purposes, but they haven't crossed the line. What my Israeli friends would say if somebody was here, yeah, but once you know how to do it, it's not that hard to go up. So I think what our approach should be is, okay, Iran, you say you are not interested in developing a nuclear weapon. You've said it for years. You're just doing this for power and medical purposes. Okay, we'll accept that. Prove it to us. Open yourselves up to the most intrusive inspection imaginable by the IAEA. We're all watching, and we're going to really do terrible things to you if you violate that. Now, put them to the test and see if they are willing to take that test. And I don't know if they will or won't, but if they say they're not interested in a nuclear weapon, then they should be willing to take that test. And then we put on another hat. I've been involved with nuclear weapons for my whole life. Age 25, I learned how to use them as a captain, and as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I had 28,000 nuclear weapons under my supervision, and my Russian colleague had 28,000 weapons under his supervision. Both of us knew they were unusable. You cannot use these things. They talk about proliferation, and there has been some proliferation, but there's been a lot of end of nuclear programs. South Africa, Libya, in our own hemisphere. And I still think that because we have such a preponderance of power, both conventional and nuclear power, we can't become paralyzed just because the Iranians might get a nuclear weapon. I think deterrence and containment still have a place to play in our strategic thinking about this, and we shouldn't let the Iranians just make us go crazy because they might have a nuclear weapon. You got a nuclear weapon, isn't that wonderful? We have 8,000. Want to play? And the answer is they won't. And so I'm not encouraging it, and I don't want them to have one, but I don't think we should go crazy over it. Same thing with the North Koreans, because their principal objective is not just to have a nuclear weapon to throw at somebody. Their principal objective is to stay in power. And they both know the quickest way to lose power is to use one of those things or to give us the impression they're going to use one, and they would lose power almost immediately.
Well, Jeffrey Immelt and General Colin Powell, thank you for your great leadership of our country and our world. Thank you.
Well done, Jeffrey. Thank you, Mark. Sorry, you're back.